Welcome. Thank you for spending your valuable Saturday morning with the League of Women Voters on this topic of high interest as we enter election season, safeguarding our votes in Santa Barbara County. My name is Virginia Souza. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters Santa Maria Valley, serving all of North Santa Barbara County. The mission of the League of Women Voters, which was formed over 100 years ago, is to assure every eligible voter has truthful, nonpartisan information on their ballots and has a secure and accessible voting experience. The format today, for today's talk with Joe E. Holland, our esteemed county clerk and registrar of voters, will be his remarks for approximately 20 minutes, followed by a 10-minute intermission. At that time, if you don't already have a small card and a pen to write your questions, you will receive that during that intermission. We'll gather your question cards and sort them for duplications at that time. And then our moderator, Laura Selkin, will then ask the questions of Mr. Holland, and he will respond. We hope that when you leave, you will have confidence your vote is safe when cast by mail or in person in Santa Barbara County. And now the reason you came out today, I will turn the mic over to Laura Selkin, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Mr. Holland was first elected to his position as Santa Barbara County Clerk, Recorder, Assessor, and Registrar of Voters. It's a long title. He was first elected in March of 2002 after a successful career in various departments in the county beginning in 1984. He served as a real estate appraiser, he served as the assessment supervisor, capital finance project manager, and a business division manager before his current position. He has a bachelor's degree in business economics and a master's degree in economics, both from UC Santa Barbara. In addition to professional education and training in his field, he served on the board of the California Association of Clerks and Elections Officials from 2005 to 2020. Active in the community, he has served as a volunteer board on the FEMA, or he currently serves as a volunteer board member on the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Program, and was involved extensively with the Santa Barbara County United Way from 1992 to 2015. He has been a resident of Santa Barbara County since 1978, and he and his wife live in Goleta. And we welcome him and thank him for trekking up here to the North County on this wonderful Saturday. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Let's see, I'm writing 2022 off for me personally. I've got 2 new knees and a bad back, and the 2 new knees are going to get me by. The bad back I'm still working on. That's why I have a stool here, so if you see me go up and down, it's because I'm in severe pain. No, it's not severe. It's just, but if you want to think that, okay. So I've got Melinda Green with me. She's sitting up here up front. Melinda is the Chief Deputy Clerk Recorder, so she oversees all recordings, marriages, everything to do with clerk recorder stuff. She's also an advanced appraiser with the State Board of Equalization, so she knows how to assess property, appraise property, and she assists with elections all the time. And I know part of the discussion today will be security, and there's a lot of security around elections, physical and technologically wise, and Melinda's really good on all that technology stuff. So if I don't have an answer, I'm going to be looking to her. So I got 20 minutes or so, and then we're going to take questions, I guess, after a short break. And I'm willing to answer as many questions as you have. One thing about elections is, we're transparent. this process is open to the public, and we want the community to have confidence in what we're doing and the security, etc. So let me start by reading a quote. This is from Chris DeRose of the Washington Post. It was May 2nd of 2021. Now, Chris DeRose, from what I understand, I don't know anything about him, but he's supposed to be a very conservative author. And he wrote, there's this quote here, "There is no function of government more critical to our republic than ensuring fair elections." No function more important to ensuring our republic than securing our elections. I think that's totally true. When you think about it, everything we do is based on elections, democracy. Whether it's school board or whether it's putting a pothole, filling a pothole in your street, everything is about elections. I mean, our community doesn't work if we don't get this right. And election workers, as you see, you can't turn on TV today without hearing about elections in some format. And for me and my staff, and for like Melinda here who helps out with elections, election workers are the front line for defending democracy. I don't think there's any question about that. We've had one of our managers, she's had people come park in front of her house just to annoy her. You know, that kind of stuff, just don't appreciate at all. So one of the things that we've often been hearing about is this oath of office and how important it is to comply with your oath of office. Now, who here works for the government? One person. Okay, so 2 people. So, well, 3 people. I do. You can't work for the government, whether it's city, county, state, or federal, without taking an oath of office. And so you hear about this oath all the time. And I've administered this oath many times to people taking public office. So it's fairly short, so I thought I'd read it to you. I, Joe Holland, do solemnly swear, or affirm, you don't have to swear if you don't want, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now that's pretty simple. 1789, that was the total oath. That was it. That was what George Washington held his hand on the Bible and swore. Then in 1861, President Lincoln decided, whoa, that's not enough just to swear that you're going to defend the Constitution of the United States. And so if we're in California, so I'm going to read you the California version. But so defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now think about that. This is 1861. All enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, pretty clear why he wanted that in there. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, and I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. So that's it. So when you hear people talking about the oath and how important it is, this is extremely important, this oath. What I advise people to do is, you know, you're getting elected to the school board and I'm administering the oath. And I say use this oath as an overarching guidance and a standard of moral conduct, as well as a foundation for leadership in making decisions. So when you get into one of these jobs, there's always what seemed like big decisions at the time, and I guess they are if you're having to make it. But you can always go back to that oath to give you some guidance on how to proceed. So one of the other things that I've been hearing a lot about is this free and fair elections. And I'm like, okay, well, I administer elections. I've been doing this for 20 years. What's a free and fair election? You know, we kind of toss these terms around without thinking about them. Free and fair, that sounds good. So on the handout, if you look at the back of the handout, when I got into my office, I started searching around some of the drawers, and there were these poll tax receipts. So you talk about free.
That wasn't free.
No, that was $2 back in 1850.
A lot of money.
Today, that would be around $60 just to go and vote. $60. What kind of turnout do you think we would get if you had to pay $60? Yeah. Now, back then, of course, only white males could vote, but just the same. So it was interesting. I did a little more research, and those poll taxes are from 1850, and that's Santa Barbara County. The poll tax was abolished in California in 1914 per a vote of the people. The U.S. didn't abolish the poll tax until 1964. So you think about that. You're talking free and fair elections. No, they weren't free for a long, long, long time. Fair. Well, this is the League of Women Voters. You know that women didn't get the right to vote until 1918. That was the 24th Amendment. And then when I was growing up, the 1971, the 26th Amendment was passed, which allowed 18-year-olds to vote. So, you know, in my job, I focus a lot on the fair, making sure everybody gets a right to vote, has the right to vote, and we make it easy for them to vote. And the free stuff, well, I have to deal with my budget and make sure you all get your ballots free. And that's, I always tell people, look, we paid for your ballot, just go ahead and vote it. Okay, now if you look at the other sheet, and my apologies, it's pretty small, but there I have elections going back all the way to 2004. The very first election I ever conducted was the October 7th, 2003. That was the recall election. That's not on here. But if you look, there's a line going across the middle of the page. It's votes cast as a total percentage of reservation, registration. And so I have conducted 5 presidential general elections. And you can see in 2004, we had an 80% turnout. In 2008, we had over 80%. In 2012, we had over 80%. I think in 2008, we had 86%. 86.4. So in every election, every presidential general election, Santa Barbara County has had over an 80% turnout. And if you go up to the top there, you can see total registration. To the far right, we're at 235,000 registered voters now. Back in, when I first started this, we were down in the 180s. So we have some things like voter motor registration, where you go to the DMV and they automatically register you and stuff like that. We have same-day registration where you can go in on election day now and register to vote. So the registration's gone up a lot, and you can see turnout has gone up also. If you look to the very right of the handout there, you'll see there's a blank space there for the last 3 elections. And that's because we've gone to all vote by mail. We don't have any percentage of people that are not getting a ballot in the mail. Everybody gets a ballot in the mail. And you can see back in 2005 was the first time that we actually went to over 50% of vote by mail. And now we're up in the 90% vote by mail. So all good stuff. So you can take that home and study it. It's all kind of fun, and that goes back to when I first started. So security. Everybody wants to know about security of elections, and I gave a talk in March of 2018 to the League of Women Voters in Santa Barbara, and I think it was an hour talk. I think I was there for 2.5 hours. It's a huge, huge topic. I'm going to touch on just some of the highlights because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and stuff. So I took office in January 2003. In April of 2003, we actually had some election vendors come out to Santa Barbara County and show us how they had these electronic voting machines. And guess what, Joe? You won't have to order paper anymore. It's going to be so nice. You're just going to have everything electronic. People go in and vote. There'll be no paper. And I said, I kind of like the system we have. I kind of like the paper that we have. And I said, thanks, but no thanks. One of the things we did need to do is we needed to provide an accessible voting machine in every polling place. And this was going to double as that. But I liked our paper ballots. Turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. Deborah Bowen, she wasn't the Secretary of State then, but she ran on a campaign about fraud, et cetera. And the first thing she did was a top to bottom review of these electronic voting machines and decertified them all. So I remember going to San Diego, taking a tour of their election office. They had this huge warehouse filled with electronic voting machines that they were not allowed to use. So that was a good thing. Then in November of 2003, so this is right after the recall election, I got a call from the San Jose Mercury News, and I'm sitting in my office. And the reporter identifies himself and says, Mr. Holland, want to ask you a question. Is your voting system hooked up to the internet? And I said, well, I don't think so. And then I got my IT guy, and I said, we were down in the basement of the courthouse at that time, and I said, let's go down and take a look. And I said, so here's the voting machine. It was a big central count thing. And I said, is this hooked up to the internet? And he said, no, it's not. I said, well, good. I go, but that PC right there, that's hooked up to this. Is that PC hooked up to the internet? And he said, yes, it is. I said, unhook it. Right now, it's the law that no voting machines or vote tabulation systems can be hooked up to the internet. But we did that back in 2004, way before that was required. So then I'm thinking, all right, this security, and again, this is 2003. This security stuff is probably a pretty big issue. So I hired a firm along with San Luis Obispo County, and we hired the security firm, and they did a top to bottom review of everything that we do in county elections. Everything from alarms to fire suppression systems to looking at how we monitor access to the facility. They looked at the technology to make sure that we were doing everything. So a complete top to bottom review. I still got that. We put in place all their recommendations, and I like to think I was on the forefront of security. But we're still doing that. Stuff like we get these phishing attacks that you've all heard of. So we need to be aware of that. So one of the things I said was, look, it's not good enough to not have our system hooked up to the internet. We need to have our server not hooked up to anything. I don't even want it remotely hooked up to the county network. So that cost about $150,000 to get our server completely disconnected from the county network. I did not want some rogue general services employee all of a sudden getting access to the election system. So it's another area where we've kind of been ahead of the curve, but it's costly to do that stuff. In smaller counties like Inyo or Modoc or Mono, they don't have the resources to do that kind of stuff. So that's kind of problematic. Yeah, so did that top to bottom review in January 2004, before the March 2004 election, and of course before the November presidential election. We did cameras, password protocol, fire security. We have a halon fire suppression system, so if there's a fire, the ballots won't burn. Voting machines, locks and screens and backup software, we encrypt it. So that if the election system went down, we're all set. And then as you can see from that handout that I gave you, the voting by mail started going way up. So again, I took office in 2003, and by 2004, over 50% of the ballots cast were vote by mail. So I'm walking through our elections facility, and we have these vote by mail batches of 200 ballots each. So as they come in, we sort them by supervisorial district, and then we put them in these batches of 200 each in a box. And we keep track of those, and there's very intricate audit process for that. But I started looking at those, and one of the checks that we do to make sure that our voting is accurate is we do a 1% manual tally, where we take 1% of the precincts and hand count those to make sure that the results match what was actually counted for that precinct. Or what I noticed was that we got all these boxes of vote by mail ballots. Who's manual tallying those? So I said, we're going to start manual tallying the vote by mail ballots. Now, this was back in 2006. That didn't become law until I think 2010. So again, we were way ahead of the curve, ensuring that that our elections are accurate. Some of the other things that we do, so when we do a manual tally, you should, if you haven't already seen one, you should come in and take a look at it. It's open to the public. We have 4 people there. 2 people are actually marking the votes. Okay, so here's one person is holding up the ballot and go, this is a vote for John Kennedy. And one person's looking at it to verify that indeed it is a vote for John Kennedy. And then the 2 people there are marking it down, a vote for John Kennedy. And once they go through the whole box or precinct, if the results don't match 100%, they have to go back through it, because I've not found the case yet where the machine makes the error. It's the people making the error. So highly accurate system. Some of the other rules that we have is you must have 2 people present at all time when you're transporting ballots. So now we have drop boxes, and we hire folks to go out in teams of 2 to pick up ballots once a day And then on election day, a little more often than that. And then at 8 o'clock, they actually stand at each one of those drop boxes and lock it at 8 o'clock unless there are people in line. So that's a rule of two. And that goes across everything that we do. Anytime you have ballots, you have to have 2 people there. In our server room where the server is with the vote tabulation machine, got to have 2 people in there. There's cameras on that. It's not an option to not have 2 people. If you don't have 2 people in there and we see it on the camera, you're going to be fired. One of the other things that we did was we used to have modems that transmitted the results from the polling place on election night. Well, they did away with that. Now, that never really bothered me, except it was a little clunkish. But because the results that you get on an election night are the unofficial results. What we used to do was we would take the votes that were transmitted on election night via these modems from the polling places, and then we would rerun them the next day to make sure that everything was fine. So it never bothered me, but Deborah Bowen didn't like it and got rid of that. So then we realized that, well, why are we even having vote tabulation at the polling places when you can't transmit it? So what I did was I said, look, let's bring all the ballots back to Election Central and we'll just tabulate them once they all arrive. And again, that was another security feature because you can keep track of all the ballots if you got them right in front of you as opposed to having them scattered across the county. One surprising thing is the results still got out about the same time. But we have other things like we have a built-in backup generator at our elections facility. I actually went to one talk at UCLA by this guy named Vint Cerf. He along with another professor invented the internet. I know. So I went up to him after this talk and I said, so Mr. Cerf, when do you think, I identify myself, I said, do you think we'll ever have internet voting? He said, well, he goes, I don't see it in the future right now, but he said with this blockchain stuff, maybe there's some potential there in the future. And so I just kind of took that with a grain of salt. And then I've also given, and I see my time's just about up, but I'm not going anywhere, so don't worry about it. But I used to take a voting machine into classrooms, and I'd go into a classroom with a bunch of 4th graders, and I'd have them all vote, and then we would run the ballots through the machine, and then the ballots would drop into the box below the machine, and then I'd print out the results. Oh man, they loved it. It was so much fun. They'd just go screaming and yelling, when I announced the results, and then, because they could all take pride that they voted for that type of ice cream or that type of car. But then I explained to them that it's all secret. So you can claim that you voted for that, but no one knows whether you really did or not. And then I asked them, these 4th graders, I said, so if we were voting over the internet or with an electronic machine that didn't have the paper ballots, but if we did internet, what could go wrong? And they're like, oh, it could be hacked. You could lose power. They had all sorts of things that could go wrong with it. And so when people ask, are we going to go to internet voting? I say, well, once you can convince those 4th graders, then, yeah, maybe. And then I'm here for as many questions as you'd like. I'm going to close out real quick with, we had a contingent, I guess the city of Santa Barbara had a sister city in Ukraine. So about 8 or 10 years ago, I forget, they had about a dozen people from Ukraine come, and I gave them the same thing I did these 4th graders, let them see how we vote, and went through the whole thing. And then at the end of it, I asked these Ukraine people through an interpreter. I said, so my understanding is that in Ukraine, you're one of the few countries that has internet voting. And I said, what do you think of that? They're like, we don't like it at all. That was, a while back. I wish, given today, I wish I would have appreciated that a little more. But again, your election workers are defending democracy. And so thanks for all your help.
Okay, thanks so much for those remarks. It was really great to hear all the wonderful things that are going on. Now we're going to take our 10-minute intermission. So if you don't have a card, you can go in the back or on either side and get your card and write your questions. And Laura and I will pick those up and we'll sort them and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes for some of your questions.
Office.
Thank you.
Certainly. Judy Frost would like to make a comment to the audience.
I just wanted to reinforce what Mr. Holland said about the oath of office and remind you, when he asked if we worked for the government, I didn't raise my hand because I'm on the Santa Barbara School Board, County School Board, and I don't consider that working. I consider it volunteering. But anybody that's on a school board takes exactly that same oath, and you should all know that.
And what I'll add about that, I was going to talk about a little more depth, but it really doesn't need that much depth. There's the flag. How many thousands of times have you done the Pledge of Allegiance? Think about those words. It's really the same words as in the oath. The oath is just a little longer, a little more specific. But every time you pledge allegiance to the flag and the republic, that means that's something. So you need to think about that whenever you got a big decision. Okay, so how do we want to start this?
This one's kind of about your staff and that. How many, and so there's about 3 different questions and they're all related but not the same. How many staff persons are used to certify an election?
Okay, so I have about 12 to 15 staff. Full-time employees, and when for the 60 days leading up to an election, we go up to like 60, and then on election day, we go up to 900, including all the poll workers, and then we have the canvass, which runs 29 to 30 days after the election, and that's the period where we're going through provisional ballots, all the vote by mail, double checking all the rosters, making sure nobody's voted twice. And we usually hold on to most of those 60 people through that 30-day canvass.
So that kind of answered one of the next questions, but one of them was also, is it hard to find people to fill all those positions, especially this year?
Yes, it is hard, and not sure. I think just in general, it's hard to hire folks nowadays. With inflation and everything, I really think the county should pay a little more money. Not sure that any of it has to do with the fact that we're actually getting people for elections, but I don't know, if you had a choice, think about this. And you wanted to be a manager working for the county, which is a good job. And you had a choice of elections or clerk recorder or auditor's office. What would you take? And, we're having to put up with a lot of crap. In some respects, it's not as much fun as it used to be, especially for the folks on the front counter who they come to work and they're doing a good job defending democracy, defending our republic, and then you get mistreated by the public. We don't get that a whole lot. but there's not a whole lot of other departments where that's happening.
Okay, great, thanks. As far as your full-time ones that were you able to keep them employed through the pandemic, and are you still having those full-time positions filled that you have year-round?
We're not fully staffed. We're having trouble retaining staff and filling it. Like I said, I think most of it's economic as opposed to working for elections. I mean, I enjoy this election stuff. I really do. I mean, it makes you feel good about what you do. And I know my wife is a CPA. She's recently retired, and she worked for a very wealthy individual. It's a great guy, really good guy. But you go home at the end of the day, and all you were doing was furthering his agenda. When you come to work for the county, you're working for the agenda of the people, and so it means something to come to work.
Right. Okay, thank you. Okay, this one is, how is mail transported to the area where the counting is being done, and what is the security for that from the post office?
So most of the ballots now are, well, everybody gets a ballot in the mail now. So that happens 29 days before the election. The post office actually does a really good job. At our household, we get our ballots the next day. I remember I went in the first day, this is 2009 or whatever, I went in and very first day in the elections office, I asked for an absentee ballot, and I was the first one to cast my ballot in the whole county. And that was kind of fun. I think that was a special election. So the post office delivers them to your door. You can drop them off at a drop box.
I think they just meant like once it's mailed back, I guess. Well, let's see.
Well, so if you drop them off at a drop box.
I mean, if you're mailing it back, it's supposed to come. It doesn't go to the post office. It goes to your office, your building,
right.
A building. So do they go back to the post office when you drop them in the mail? I don't even know, because I always drop mine in a drop box.
So for you to return your ballot, there's a number of different ways. You can drop it in a drop box.
But if you mail it,
if you can mail it in a blue.
And where does it go when you mail it?
It goes to the central post office down in Goleta.
Okay, so that's what they want to know, is how does it get to the place it's supposed to be counted?
Well, how it gets to there is the U.S. Post Office gets it, and then we send a team of 2 people down every single day to go pick up the vote by mail ballots, and then we bring them back and start the processing of them.
That's what they wanted to know, and what the security was involved in that.
But it's the 2-person rule. You always have to have 2 people, whether you're picking them up from the post office or picking them up from a drop box or picking them up from the polls. Yeah, and they're all locked, at that point in time after the polls have closed.
Okay, and then sort of a follow-up, or why are the ballots, or is a ballot mailed to everyone? And they don't go to everyone, they go to everyone that's registered. But why is it mailed to everyone now and not just those who request it? Their concern is that it costs more. Paper is wasted for those that don't ever do anything with it, and it's a waste of taxpayer money and so forth.
Okay.
They just want to know why that it's done that way.
Well, first of all, democracy is not cheap. And really, it's not. I mean, these elections, they cost a lot of money. We first went to all vote by mail in California in November 2020 to conduct that election during the middle of a pandemic. And if you remember November 2020, we did not even have any vaccinations then. It was a huge challenge well, first of all, you give everybody a ballot through the mail, but then we had to find facilities that were big enough where we could accommodate voters that didn't want to just drop off their vote by mail ballot, but they wanted to come into a polling place. And so we had to have big enough space where people could vote safely. This room wouldn't have cut it. But we needed like basketball gyms and things like that. So that's why we went to all vote by mail. And if you look at those statistics, you can see 2004 or 2005 was the first time we were over 50% ballots cast by mail. And it just kept going up and up and up and up. And by the time we went to all vote by mail, I think we were at 78% anyhow by that time.
And am I correct in saying it's a state law now?
Yeah, it's a state law now where everybody in the state gets a vote by mail ballot. And, you know, it was on its way. Oregon was already there. Colorado was already there. Washington, the state of Washington, were all vote by mail. It was just inevitable, and the pandemic kind of pushed it.
Okay. Are vote by mail ballots actually counted before the election day? This person says they get emails that say their ballot has been received and counted prior to election day, but she wasn't sure if is it really counted before election day or just received?
Yes, it is. It is tabulated before election day. We can start tabulating now 29 days before the election. So as we receive ballots, the first thing we do is we run them through a signature verification machine, and if it doesn't verify the signature, then we actually do it by hand, by eye. Then once it's gotten into the system, we send you an email or a text message saying your ballot has been received. And then, right. So those tabulated ballots, no one gets to see those results until 8 o'clock on election night. So even though we're counting them, remember we got a server, only 2 people are allowed in that room, and that has to be 2 people.
The file gets run to count it at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's all pre-set up.
But not actually.
But it's,
So it's in case you couldn't hear, she's saying it's preset, but not actually counted.
count at 8 o'clock. We run the file, it runs.
Right. So we've tabulated all the ballots we have on hand, and then those results go up right at 8 o'clock. Usually, at that point in time, unless it's a really tight margin for a particular race, it's over with. Because we have so many ballots that we've already tabulated that by 8 o'clock you know what's going on. Unless there's a close race, then you're going to be looking at the ballots cast or dropped off at the polling places. A lot of people wait until election day.
Absolutely. Okay. This is kind of related to that a little bit. How are forged ballots detected in our county?
So our signature verification machine is really good. And it's like I've gone back and checked, and okay, let's see how this thing's doing. I can't find one that was mistakenly accepted where it didn't match. Now, our signature verification machine, it only accepts about half of the signatures. And so then what we do is our system set up, so then we take those, because it captures a picture of the signature. So when we have people go to computers and they sit there, and it'll bring up 4 signatures at a time with the signatures from the voter registration for those people. And then these people doing that, they'll go through, if they see an anomaly, they kick it out. And then that goes to a supervisor to approve. And if a supervisor can't approve it, then it goes to a manager. So by the time it gets to a manager, it's a very small percentage. But that's the one thing about vote by mail. Every signature is compared with what's on file. If we don't accept your signature because it doesn't match, we send you a letter. We were one of the first counties to do that. And guess what? We did not get a lot of people that were upset, saying, what do you mean you're not accepting my signature? Because, take a look. It doesn't match. Would you accept that? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, I just scribbled that down. I won't do that again.
Right, okay. Are you mailing ballots, or are mailing ballots being mailed to people who are deceased?
If we know they're deceased, then absolutely not. Now, I was explaining to a gentleman earlier that it's not enough for you to come in and say, well, Jane Doe across the street passed away. Can you remove her from the rolls? We can't do that. No, we need official documentation. So the California Department of Public Health, if they let us know, and we're working with the state, with them, for my whole career, we've worked with them and we've gotten better and better at it. Do some slip through the cracks? I wouldn't doubt it. If you pass away in another state, let's say you're on vacation, or let's say you went to a sabbatical somewhere, or you want to take a class down in Costa Rica to learn Spanish, and you die there, well, we don't know that. And there's no way we can verify that. So the way that it works is that if you fail to vote in 2 consecutive federal general elections, we put you on the inactive list. And then you'll stop receiving voter information guides and ballots.
Okay. How can unregistered people vote on election day?
One of the projects that I worked on for a long time is same-day voter registration. And that sounds like a simple thing. Oh, come on in, register and vote on election day. We'll give you a ballot. Well, it ain't that easy. What if you just drove into Santa Barbara County and you wanted to vote here, but you'd already cast your ballot in another county? How do we check that? So we had to wait until we could get the statewide voter registration system up and running so that we could tell instantaneously if you voted anywhere else in the state. So now if you go into one of our polling places, let's say you moved across the county, you could go to your new polling place, walk in there, register to vote on election day with a new address, and we will check to verify that you have not voted at your old address, and then we will issue you a ballot for your new address because we know that you have not voted anywhere else in the state for this election.
Okay. This is kind of, and you may not know this one because it's kind of a U.S. State, nationwide, but do you believe, I guess, that the U.S. government should provide money to disconnect all the voter systems from the internet? I mean, you're saying it's a state law? First of all, I'll ask on my own, is that a state law or a federal law? That they not be
It's a state law that they're not supposed to be hooked up to the internet. At least that's what I comply with. If there's
So
a federal one,
we're not sure if that's a national law, so we won't. How do they inspect for that? I mean, is there any kind of a state, and we'll just talk from the state point of view, is there a way that they're inspecting every county to make sure that they are disconnected from the internet?
They have to approve each voting system, and although I've not submitted personally all the technicalities of it, I think that's part of it. And then it's law. We have to comply with it. You know, the last thing I want is somebody walking in my office saying, show me that you're not connected to the internet, and then have them discover that we're connected to the internet. I mean, we just don't let it happen.
What was the purpose of the poll tax? Was it to get income for the elections, or was it to screen potential voters?
It was to provide money for schools. Yeah, I had some of the verbiage to it, but it got lost in all the papers. But no, the poll tax was to provide money for schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or at least that was what the reasoning for it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there, apparently we use Diebold voting machines here in our county. Are there any issues with that, and should we still use them?
So when I first started working elections in 1998, when I was a manager in the assessor's office, just to help out. And we had a system that was called Global. AccuScan, it's that same old, you fill in the bubble, and the same stuff we all did in high school, and is 50-year-old technology, and it works really, really well. So as global election company, they were bought out by Diebold after that, but didn't change the technology we were using. Again, we do that manual tally after every election for randomly drawn 1% of all vote by mail and 1% of all precincts, and I've never seen a discrepancy. It's extremely accurate. So what we have now is Dominion, and Dominion now, it's no longer an optical scan, it's an optical image. They actually take a picture of the ballot, and it knows by taking that picture which ballot it is and what contests there are on there, and the software will actually tabulate based upon that picture. Now, when we do the same thing with the manual tally based on this Dominion product, extremely accurate. So I have no concerns whatsoever. And believe me, we went through that to the nth degree to make sure that what we were purchasing was accurate and that we had confidence in it. And so I've been extremely pleased with our Dominion product. It's all central count, so all the ballots are brought back, and it's high speed, so we can go through and actually get it done and rather quickly. I'm anticipating that we will be able to have our election staff home for Thanksgiving.
And the Secretary of State does a lot of testing and certifies what equipment we can use.
Yes.
She, in case you didn't hear, she said the Secretary of State also checks the machines and certifies them. Okay, I just have one or two questions left. This one is, given that Santa Maria is the largest city in the county, the question is, why is the Santa Maria election office not open year-round like the Santa Barbara one is, or instead of the Santa Barbara one?
Very good question. Money. And that's really it, money.
But I mean, I guess the question is, just move the money to Santa Maria and have the Santa Maria one be open all the time, and the Santa Barbara one have the Santa Maria hours?
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It's really, I mean, we're already set up downtown, we do try and keep it open here as much as possible. We used to have an office in Lompoc, and we still open up our Santa Maria office and our Lompoc office the 30 days before an election, so folks can come in and register, get a ballot, and vote. And even that's expensive.
Okay. The last one is, what does your department directly do to encourage people to vote?
We send them all a ballot.
It's valid.
We have the voter information guide. We have a website. I used to go out to schools and teach kids. I don't do that much anymore, mostly because we don't have those same voting machines anymore. They used to be easy to take in. So we're working on a number of levels. We also have outreach through the media, through print and radio, and both in Spanish and in English, and just on and on and on. But we do everything we can and more.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll let Virginia finish up, but I do want to thank everyone for your questions, and Joe for taking the time to answer them.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Laura. I'd like to, at this time, thank the sponsors of our talks. We have another talk with Joe Holland. If he can, I know he's really looking forward to doing this again. And it was entertaining. We thoroughly enjoyed it and enjoyed your humor. I know you're under a lot of, you should be getting a raise sometime soon, I think, right? You're under- Did you have a question? I think this lady came in late. Can you bring the question up? What happens if?
If you're a felon and
Oh,
not a
oh.
hard criminal or
Oh,
anything, and you can't vote, what happens with that?
Okay, has to do with people that are have left incarceration and they're maybe on probation or parole.
Right. And then they're not allowed to vote. So what we get a file from the Board of Corrections through the statewide voter registration database, and it notifies us of those individuals that are not allowed to vote because they're either in prison on a felony or on parole. Is it perfect? I don't know. I have not seen any case in Santa Barbara County where a felon was actually allowed to vote and we became aware of it. But that's how it's handled.
What happens if you're just on probation, you're no longer on probation, or anything, you're still allowed to vote?
I know unless the law recently changed, and it might have because I know it's been changing across the nation, but it used to be that if you're in prison for a felony or on parole, you're not allowed to vote. That may have changed, I'm not sure.
What if you're just in jail like years ago?
No, you can still vote. No, actually, we have a program that if you're just in jail, let's say in county jail, let's say for a DUI or something, I don't know, you're still allowed to vote. We actually have a program where we get in touch with the sheriff's office and we reach out to those folks that are incarcerated in the county jail because we don't keep people in the county jail for a felony. After they're convicted, then they move on to the state penitentiary.
Oh, okay, because I
Thank you.
haven't voted for the last
Thank you.
50 years. Like that.
Well, you could talk to our voter service people after this meeting, and I'm sure they may have the latest on that. That's Joyce and Allison. And by the way, I'd like to have our board members please stand. This is the League of Women Voters, Santa Maria Valley, that produced this meeting and such a valuable meeting. So thank you to the board of directors. They're the ones that make all of this work possible.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the services you guys provide is really good. Like I said, I gave that talk in March 2018 and on security, and it was like 2 or 3 hours, but the league down there got the word out, and it was tremendous. You guys, you helped the whole democracy process.
Thank you for saying that. We have a newsletter in the back which tells you about the upcoming, we're working closely with Santa Barbara League, so there are some Zoom candidate forums for 37th Assembly District. There's a pro and con Zoom meeting that Santa Barbara's putting on that we're all invited to sign into, and back at the table you'll find a newsletter with other opportunities for you to learn and become educated to cast that vote as an educated voter. We'd like to thank our sponsors very much at this time. That's NAACP, SB Can, Family Service Agency from Guadalupe for this afternoon, where we'll be doing this talk again, Guadalupe Community Change Makers, Santa Barbara County Commission for Women, the Fund for Santa Barbara. So thank you for those sponsors, and thank you once again for spending your Saturday morning with us. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you again. That was great.